John, why did you buy your first property in the Philippines instead of America?
At the time I was living here, I live in the heart of the financial district in BGC. My apartment was $300,000 for 120 square meter. Something like that in New York or San Francisco or even LA would be like in the millions, right? So it was cheap. I bought the home in cash, and I knew the rental yields would be above 8% for long-term rent. So I know right off the bat it was a good investment.
From all the countries you bought property in, which country is the most tough to manage?
Oh, I'd say US is the most difficult place to manage properties, especially if you're doing Airbnb and vacation rentals, because in the US, managing vendors is the most difficult part. Plumbers, electricians, whatever it is, roofers, they're extremely expensive. And if you live in more remote places like I do, like in Lake Tahoe or in Hawaii, they're so remote, and the limits, I mean, you're just really limited in how many people you have or how many vendors that are available. So they're oftentimes very expensive, and they don't want to come out. So they're either really flaky or they're expensive. Here in the Philippines, you can get labor for quite cheap, and they do a very good job. Cleaners, for example, are a prime example. Cleaners, you show them how to clean a property one time, and they just, and they do it right every single time. Whereas when you're managing cleaners in the US, for example, you always have to stay on top of them, because after you tell them one time, they'll forget about it. The quality just starts to drop off after a while. I talk to other people who run Airbnbs. I'm telling you, running Airbnbs in the US is, managing vendors is the worst part of it.
Were you surprised to meet a Filipino investor when you went house hunting in Japan?
We didn't know too many foreigners. We didn't know too many people there. I was a bit surprised because, the guy who we met, Felix, he's been living there for 10 years, but he's not the most fluent in Japanese. And I know from talking to many foreigners who've lived there for a long time, Japan is a very, very difficult place to assimilate to. Easy place to visit, great place to be a tourist, but difficult to really live and set up your life there. And it was surprising for me to see a Filipino buy properties the way Felix did, because he was building up his property portfolio, and he was buying properties sight unseen. So that was a bit surprising.
John, you clearly have a passion for real estate and making content, but why did you start? What made you get into real estate to begin with, and what's your goal?
Well, I started out my venture with the dream of living around the world. So my idea was to have vacation rentals or Airbnbs in every continent, one or two in every continent. So my idea was to live around the world, spend about 2 or 3 months in each continent. And while I was there, I was going to explore different countries and different areas. And then when I was gone, I was going to rent this out. And this was supposed to be my retirement income. So that was my vision. But going forward, that's a very difficult business to scale, especially doing it on your own. So in the future, what I would like to do is build massive real estate portfolios using my time, using my experience and expertise, and using my success, and try to bring other investors like me who have similar dreams but can't manage it themselves, and they want to be able to work with a partner to help them build out a beautiful real estate portfolio and have the lifestyle experiences that I've had with this. Investing in real estate shouldn't just be purely a financial instrument. It should be a lifestyle investment as well. Why not have the best of both worlds? Why not get great returns, own assets, live around the world, and enjoy that life?
What advice would you give someone trying to enter the real estate market starting from scratch?
Like, if you don't have money to buy real estate, my suggestion is to get into the real estate industry. There's a couple of things that I would do. There's 3 segments that I would really look at. One is to be a real estate agent, or to work in real estate sales, where you're working with a broker and learning about transaction. You're learning about how to find deals, figuring out what is a good deal and what's a bad deal, and you're learning a lot from other people and other investors. So there's a lot to gain from that. The second aspect is in construction. In constructing and rehabbing a property, if you can work for a construction company, work for a contractor, that will give you an experience about how to rehab a home. The third part of it is property management. If you can work for a property management company and learn the ropes of what it takes to manage the property, how to optimize the revenues and your costs, that would be a great way to get into the real estate experience, get that expertise right off the bat. So when you do have the funds, the best way to start acquiring assets is utilizing leverage, right? So it's difficult for people to buy properties straight out with cash, but in a lot of countries like in Japan or in the US or whatever, you can have as little as like 5% of the down payment. There are so many programs out there that offer people with low income a way to get into a home. And I would just do that, start there and buy your primary residence. Live there for a year or two, qualify as a primary residence, and then rent it out as an investment. And that's gonna get you started. That's gonna get you cash flow, that's gonna get you credibility. And then from there, you can refinance the asset that you currently have and invest in the second one. And the key is to scale out your property portfolio. That comes through time, and once you get your first investment, the rest will start becoming easier and easier. I think you just need to start somewhere.
What problems do you see in the Philippines real estate market?
Okay, so the problem I see that I don't hear a lot of people talking about is there seems to be a big lack of liquidity in the market, especially in the secondary sales of property. The whole real estate market seems to favor and be set up for these huge conglomerates to develop major developments like condominiums, high rises. Even now, townships and housing lots are developed by these major developers. And it's great because they're partially financed by people. And the way they set it up is if you want to get into a pre-selling or pre-built property before they even break ground, you're going to get the most discount and advantages, but you're going to also get easy financing. So this easy financing really sets up the developers. It's partially financed by the people who are buying it before the property is being turned over. And during this time, people are paying down a monthly payment that's going to eventually, by the time the property is turned over within 2 to 4 years, they would have paid 20% or so of their property value. And that's the minimum requirement for bank financing. And it just so happens that these property developers are also major conglomerates that own and run their own banks. For example, like BDO is also the same company as SM. BPI and Ayala are part of the same company and conglomerate. So it goes on and on. Another problem with that too is it leads to a lot of speculation. So a lot of people buy pre-selling properties, not with the intention of living in the property, but more to flip the property at a, say, 20% gain in value. That leads to speculation, which also creates an asset price bubble. The benchmark for BGC is about 250, 300,000 peso per square meter, regardless of what the property looks like, right? The secondary market comes along. When you have this property and you want to sell it, once the property is turned over, you've lived in it and you want to sell it to somebody else, probably going to be, in most cases, your property is going to be sitting on the market for a while and there's not going to be a whole lot of ready buyers because there's not a lot of financing option. Banks are smart. They know how to underwrite for the risk and they don't like financing secondary properties because, and the way you know that is the bank financing options and the terms aren't very competitive, especially when you compare it to the rest of the world, when you compare it to the US markets, UK market, Japan market. Financing options aren't very favorable. And that's why a lot of people end up buying in cash. It's because of risk. It's risk of default, it's risk of foreclosures. And having to go through a foreclosure in the Philippines, you'd have to go through the Philippines court system. And the court systems are fairly inefficient here. So it could take a really long time, it could be very expensive. I think if there's anything I would change, it would be policies regarding that. I mean, in the judicial court system, making it easier for landlord to evict tenants that aren't paying rent, making it easier for banks to foreclose on properties. Those type of things would increase the liquidity. Policies around foreign investors also limit liquidity in the market. For example, foreigners can't own land. So that's gonna eliminate a lot of liquidity from foreigners. And even within the condominium developments, only up to 40% of the properties that are allotted can be sold to foreigners. Me as a foreigner, I wish the Philippines government would allow foreigners to buy land. I understand why those policies are set in place. They're set up to protect local Filipinos and to ensure that they have an advantage and they're not priced out of their own markets. I would also consider creating rules and policies that limit speculation because when we take an example of Siargao or El Nido, let's take Siargao for example. I went to Siargao back in 2010, and at that time, the price per square meter in Siargao in front of the road by the ocean was about 2,500 per square meter. Behind the road was about 1,500 per square meter. When people caught wind that Surigao was a great investment and people started buying it by the droves, it went up like 10x overnight, it seemed like. But when you go there, there's still very limited development. So you see that a lot of speculation happens. If you went there and there was a full development of Surigao after, after a few years, then I can understand the justification of the prices going up so much. There could be more rules in place that limit speculation investing in real estate.
Can you tell me why you like living in the Philippines though?
No, my favorite part about living in the Philippines is I feel the most comfortable with the relationships with people I have here. I don't find that the Philippines is the best place to invest. I do like some opportunities here in the Philippines, and I've experienced some of the upside. But for me, I come back here because of the people. I'm here because I like my relationship with my friends, the relationships I'm able to make. I come to this country and I fit in automatically. I feel welcomed. In Japan, for example, it's much more difficult to break that barrier, the cultural barrier. Here, I feel like there's almost no barrier for a foreigner. In fact, I think, when you live here as a foreigner, you're kind of like the cool kid. The interesting thing is the people and the friends that I have here in the Philippines, they're much more interesting. They're highly successful people. They're highly influential people. Another great thing about the Philippines is I'm one connection away from anybody I need to make anything I want happen here. That's got to be worth something. I hope you guys have enjoyed my rambling vlog. Hope you guys follow me for more like global real estate advice or investment advice, Airbnb advice, just ways to get ahead in life. See you in the next video.